Hey, it's JUCK.
I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback.
The truth is, Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those.
You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country.
And welcome into JUCK on Bucks on a Monday morning, coming to you live. Back to back lives. Friday, we popped up again Sunday, and here we are. Monday morning, it's live. Load up the chat. I'm with you. I can even answer your questions. I'll prove it to you. I know you guys don't always believe me. Doreen, I see you. Good morning. Good morning, Nate. But we got a lot of college football to talk about today. Tons of big stories came out of the weekend that we went into looking at a slate that was not so hot on the surface. It didn't look fantastic. But I think we got a whole lot of answers about a couple of teams. We had some big questions about Georgia this week. Colorado's story. We got a big job opening thanks to Bonehead Billy, going to get fired here pretty soon. And not a lot of conference games, but when we got a slate like this, everybody always says these are the weeks we see a ton of chaos. And not so much chaos this week. Definitely not chaos, but we had some fun games for sure. The Backyard Brawl, Pitt and West Virginia, one of the most fun games. It kind of flew under the radar. But the only upset really of any substance was Portal Mike and Florida State losing to Memphis. But that one was pretty predictable, as about 5 people I talked to were taking Memphis in the money line. They were a 6.5-point dog at the Doak. And, well, we'll do the losers at the end. Let's start with the big dogs. Ohio State, of course, on a bye or an improvement week, if you want to call it the Ryan Day's term for it. Texas and Georgia, those are the top 3. Buckeyes, Texas, and Georgia, according to everybody. Bucks will be back in action this week, but off last Saturday. So how did Texas and Georgia do? Texas played UTSA. They won 56-7, and Quinn Ewers got hurt early in the game with an abdominal strain. He's now week to week, and their hero Arch Manning came in, and Arch Mania is officially underway. I got to say, I whiffed on Arch. Arch, he's got a great arm. He's a very good athlete, a better athlete than I gave him credit for. Makes really good decisions when he's in there. He had a really impressive touchdown run. He clocked over 21 miles an hour. However, I'm suspect on these miles per hour thing anymore. I'm a little bit jaded with this because I don't know, man. Some of it just doesn't add up to me. But he had a really nice juke, long touchdown, looked really good, man. The dude's an athlete, got a good head on his shoulders. I really underrated him coming out of high school. I thought that it was more about his name. I thought he was a solid 4-star at Newman coming out of New Orleans. Did not think he was a number 1 overall. And I think I was wrong. He's awesome. And he might be the starting quarterback had Quinn not been the incumbent and they actually went in and had a competition in the offseason. But Quinn has been great for them. Playoffs, Heisman candidate. He's from Texas. Also a number 1 overall quarterback. And, they just love Arch, and I can't blame them. Texas's next 2 games, Louisiana Monroe and then Mississippi State. Mississippi State, by the way, got their stupid cowbells rung by the great state of Ohio on Saturday when Toledo went in and smashed them 41-17. MAC over SEC. Consecutive weeks now that the MAC has beaten the number 5 rated team in the country in Notre Dame. And then Mississippi State. Toledo moves to 3-0. NIU now ranked. Could we see the potential of that group of 5 playoff team come out of the MAC? That would be amazing. But as far as Texas goes, I think we're going to see a lot of Arch in the next 2 games. And I think he's going to absolutely kill it based on him kind of being on fire and the competition being terrible. Which means as soon as Quinn Ewers comes back, the Longhorn fan base is absolutely going to turn on him if he starts playing bad. It's going to come quick. That's not a great situation to be in. But I don't know what to do if you're Sark because, the dude's a rock star, man. I don't know how long you can hold him back. As for Georgia, I've been saying it since the offseason and again on Friday. This Georgia team is not some juggernaut of a team. They are not as good as the team that Ohio State played and went blow for blow with 2 years ago. They're certainly not as good as the team the year before that. is this Ohio State team of ours better than the team we had that day? That day required a phenomenal performance from a very special quarterback, obviously, but I think this current team has the makings to be better than that Ohio State team. But this Georgia team does not have the makings to be better than those teams that repeated. Georgia went into Kentucky, and boy, did Kirby make a big deal about going into Kentucky. Road games in the SEC. We get it, Kirby. But the thing is, South Carolina just went into Kentucky the week before and absolutely beat the brakes off of Kentucky because they beat them up front. The South Carolina defensive line destroyed Kentucky. Georgia was not able to do that against Kentucky. Sure, the offense was stagnant of Georgia, just 6 points heading into the fourth quarter, down 9-6. Heading into the fourth, they end up winning 13-12. Kentucky coach Mark Stoops played very conservatively at the end, getting appropriately smashed by the Kentucky faithful for the way he coached the end of that game, and he's standing by his decision. But you got the number one team in your house, and you're going to turtle up at the end when you got a chance to win, plus territory, just outside of field goal range, 4th and 8, and he chose to punt. I mean, we see it happen every time. You turtle up in a situation like that and play not to lose, you end up losing. So that pretty much sealed the deal for Kentucky. His team outgained Georgia 284-262. Not often that we see a Georgia team lose the total yards battle. Georgia as a team only rushed for 102 yards behind this offensive line that we were told was the best in college football. Them and LSU, who also had a day. But just 12 first downs against Kentucky. Kentucky had 23 first downs, 12 for Georgia. Travis Etienne, 4.2 yards a carry. Carson Beck, 15 for 24 for 160 yards. The Dawgs look so bad that in the show yesterday, they were asking how I thought of the performance, and I was just kind of running down, and it slipped out of my mouth. Like, I don't know how you get over it, or I don't know if Kirby can grab him back after a loss like this. Like, I called it a loss because that's how it felt when I was just flying through talking. Like, it just was such a poor performance from the Dawgs. By the way, set your alarm bells, subscribe over at JUCK on Bucks, because I do pop on live in the weekend at random times, and those conversations are always fun. But I called it a loss. They looked atrocious. That Kentucky team is bad. Kentucky teams are often solid. That one's not. They're not a solid team. That's not a normal solid Kentucky team. They're bad. And Georgia, for some reason, plays really bad against Kentucky. Now, the difference here is you can play bad games, and we have them all the time at Ohio State, where the quarterback and the receivers just aren't in sync. People are making mistakes. Things just look bad. The difference here is this Kentucky team, and that certainly happened at Georgia, but this Kentucky team went blow for blow with them in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And if Kentucky can go blow for blow with that Georgia team in the trenches, what's Texas going to do to them? What's Bama going to do to them in 2 weeks? What's Ohio State going to do to them? Just the third time in the last 5 years that Georgia's been held to under 20 points on the road. Georgia's still to play Ole Miss, Alabama, and Texas on the road. Then they get Tennessee at home. That's a whole lot of top 10 teams in there, because the SEC now has, I think, 6 of the top 7 teams, and we'll go over the polls in a little bit. But my point about Kirby is, and I was talking about this with the car situation the other day, I don't think that he's using this as a big opportunity, right? He gets excited when this happens, when he squeaks one out, because he can rein that team in and get their full attention. I don't know if he quite has it like that anymore. And the situation with the car thing, with yet another guy getting arrested Thursday, the fact that these guys continue to show him this kind of disrespect and disrespect for the program, this is now a large portion of this team that has been involved in this crap. And if you continue to bring that kind of heat, that much blatant disrespect, when your coach is under scrutiny, when your program's under scrutiny, is this a team that Kirby can just grab their attention anymore like he used to be able to? I don't know if he can. I really don't. I think there's a big disconnect in that organization, and I don't think it's exclusive to this car thing. I think we're going to see it pop out in another area, and we might just see it quickly. But they've just been challenged. We'll see what happens next, as they got a bye week. Then they head to Bama. And that game, it's going to tell us a whole lot, not just about Georgia, but we get to see Kalen DeBoer in Alabama's first big game under him. because Wisconsin certainly did not provide that for us. More on that in a sec. But Texas, Georgia, and now number 4, Alabama. Alabama, a big favorite heading into Camp Randall. I was looking forward to this game, Alabama, Wisconsin, all off season. It was probably, I think, in my top 15 when I did my top 25, just because of the implications I thought it had, and because I thought that Luke Fickell would have them a little further along than he does. Bama won big, 42-10. Milroe, 275 all-purpose yards, 5 touchdowns. I love watching that dude run. He is a phenomenal athlete. 17-year-old wide receiver Ryan Williams, one of the awesome freshmen in this class, with another long touchdown, and that kid is smooth. Him, JJ, Ryan Wingo at Texas also popped off yesterday with Arch. Cam Coleman at Auburn. There's a pile of them. Pile of these young receivers. And this was my point about Chris Carter being the best Ohio State all-time wide receiver, because these dudes in the last 10 years have just been raised like this. Like the training they get from the time they're young is so intense and in-depth. Chris Carter never had any of that. Enough about that. Wisconsin quarterback Tyler Van Dyke gets hurt very early in the game. Would it have made a difference? Absolutely not. Not in the result. It might have been a little more exciting. But Wisconsin has a long way to go. I don't really think I learned anything about Alabama. Here's Luke Fickell, what he had to say after the game.
I'll give you guys the same message I just gave them. If you haven't had your ass whooped before, you just did. And it hurts, and it's not easy. But in this game, that's going to happen. And it's a part of the game. It stinks. It doesn't mean you didn't work hard. It didn't mean you didn't prepare. It means you didn't get the job done. And whether it's a 1-point loss or a 34-point loss, it's a good old-fashioned ass whooping at home.
It was indeed. And I got to say, Wisconsin fans not happy. There is a portion that are starting to question Fickell and Fickell's process. And I honestly thought that he would have them further along right now. You look at a team like Nebraska and Matt Rule in his year 2, and no, Wisconsin and Nebraska aren't the same thing, but to a 16 or 17-year-old they are, right? Maybe not to us. Or maybe some of you feel at this point Nebraska has fallen down to that level of college football. They certainly have a lot more resources than Wisconsin, but there's a lot of resources at Wisconsin as well. And in the NIL era, I feel like Luke had the ability to flip this roster around a little bit quicker, and he chose not to. And he wants to do it, he wants to do it a different way. And got a good recruiting class going, and that's good. And I certainly think that they are going to get it together and eventually be as good as they were under Paul Chryst. But that's a big alumni base, and part of your job as a college football coach now is to develop a robust NIL program. That's part of your job now. And I have not seen Luke really excelling in that area. And, I wish the best for him. He'll always be a Buckeye. But not good enough. Definitely not good enough yet. How about the team that most of us thought was the number 3 team heading into the country or heading into the season? Oregon. Oregon obviously not been playing well. They head up to Corvallis to play their rival Oregon State in the Civil War. They had lost 3 out of 4 up there. Their first 2 games against Idaho and Boise State, they struggled on offense. They were rotating guys on the offensive line. They got a big problem at center. Struggled defending the run. Oregon State, heading into that game, had 2 backs. Both of them had 200 yards already on the season. And Saturday, Oregon had a classic Oregon Duck explosion. I want you to listen to the following yardage totals. This is each player on Oregon's longest play from scrimmage. Dylan Gabriel, 54. Jordan James, 14. Noah Whittington, 27. Trayshawn Holder, 21. Tez Johnson, 27. Terrence Ferguson, 20. Holden receiving, 20. Evan Stewart, 12. Jaden Limar, 71. Just explosive play after explosive play. Dylan Gabriel, 20 for 24, 291 and 2 touchdowns, 546 yards total, and 7.5 yards per carry. Ducks defense held the Oregon State Beavers to 4 yards per carry. Now, Oregon State, they sucked. They're a bit of a fraud. That's true. But just like I said with Ohio State last week, playing Western Michigan, you can play a crap team and not play well, or you can play a crap team and play very well. And I thought that Oregon played really, really well. It looks like they have figured some things out and they are clicking. Now we'll have to see that offensive line match up against a better opponent, but it might have been the get right performance that they needed. I thought the AP was pretty quick to drop them down in the polls, which I liked. I like the fluidity that the AP is doing this year with the polls. Do they throw them back up now? We'll get to that in a second when we get to the polls. Next up, Ole Miss, 40-6 over one of the worst teams in the ACC, Wake Forest. Number 6, Tennessee. Everybody's fallen all over them, beating Kent State. I don't know about you, but when I hear Penn State and Kent State, I can never make it out. And sometimes I can't say it like just now, but Kent State, 71-0. I saw this quote the other day, last night. Domination rarely seen in D1 football, describing Tennessee's victory over Kent State. And if you're not familiar, Kent State is very, very bad this year. I do think Tennessee is really good, but not because of that. Josh Heupel onside kicked up 30-0 in the second quarter. A pretty ruthless move. The dude's out for blood for sure. Number 7, Missouri. They were a 16-point favorite against Boston College. Bill O'Brien and the Boston College Screaming Eagles came in, played them tough in the start. They ran out, jumped out up front quickly. Thomas Castellanos, 2 touchdowns in the first half. That dude's a baller, but he makes some dumb plays too. And Missouri had to rally to win, 27-21. That's a loss for me as I picked Missouri to cover 16. Not a good week for your boy. 4-5 on the week after going 6-5 last week. But Luther Burden, that dude's dynamic, 117 yards and a touchdown. He's great with the ball in his hands after the catch. And after the game, he was a little upset. There was only 2 ranked games this week. One of them was Missouri-Boston College, and Luther not happy with the treatment that they got by the media. They didn't get a primetime game. He was a little salty about not getting much attention about it. And, he had the opportunity to come to Ohio State. He chose to stay at Missouri, and that's what happens. You don't get the high-profile games. That's just part of it. It's part of your college decision. It really is. Number 10, Miami, 62-0 over Ball State, and Cam Ward, kind of the front runner right now for the Heisman Trophy for most people. Another 5 touchdowns, 346 yards for him. And with Florida and Florida State in the current position they're in, Miami's going to benefit a lot from that. And things are humming. Things are humming for Miami. Big 12 favorite coming into the season, Utah, entered the game against Utah State without Cam Rising. Stop me if you've heard this before. Every week last year, it was Cam Rising. He's probably going to play next week. He was out the whole season. Last week, he gets a laceration on his finger or something stupid. Can't play again. This guy in his 7th year of college football. I mean, I don't know, man. I've never seen somebody miss so many games. But Utah ends up winning 38-21. Utah State is terrible this year. One of the 2 ranked games this week, Kansas State, this was a Friday night game, hosted number 20 Arizona. Kansas State came in ranked number 14, and Kansas State beat them 31-7. I was watching the game with my son and Dylan Edwards, who transferred from Colorado. He was back on a punt return, and he called it. He's like, he's going to return this one. And sure enough, he did. It was a pretty exciting moment for us. But Arizona quarterback Noah Fifita, best wide receiver in college football currently. Look out for JJ. But currently, TMAC, Teteroa McMillan, is the best in college football, and he is fun to watch. But Fifita just looks for him every single play. 11 receptions for 138. That offense is a one-trick pony, and they absolutely got destroyed by K-State. As for Avery Johnson, the guy that Kansas State moved Will Howard kind of out for to get him up, he's a tremendous athlete, but as a quarterback, 14 for 23, 2 touchdowns. They schemed the tight end wide open. It's just not very impressive, but he is a hell of an athlete. I don't know if I would have done what they did, pushing Will Howard out, because they are right there in position to win the Big 12 and potentially make the playoffs. And they opted to go for this guy. I don't know if that's going to end up being a situation like the McCord situation, where I feel like it was best for all parties. pushing out Will Howard and going with Avery Johnson. I don't know if that's going to be the best move for K-State. They might sacrifice a potential playoff year this year and a chance to win the Big 12 because of that decision. We'll see what happens. Oklahoma, they got their first SEC game next week. Last week they played Tulane. Tulane the week before gave Kansas State a game, and they gave this Oklahoma team a game into halftime. Oklahoma pulls away, wins 34-19. Jackson Arnold, 100 yards rushing. I do think everybody pegged Oklahoma correctly this year. Their win total was 7 games. Their fans were furious about that. The disrespect. This is not a very good Oklahoma team, and they are about to find that out next week when Tennessee and their former native son, Josh Heupel, the 2000 Oklahoma starting quarterback for that national championship team, rolls into town with his Vols. That is going to be a mismatch. Not going to be a good one. One of the more exciting games of the day, LSU headed into South Kakalaki. South Carolina was a 7-point underdog at home. I was on South Carolina, one of the few games that I won. South Carolina jumped out to a 17-0 lead. Quarterback Lenora Sellers got hurt. At one point in the second quarter, I checked LSU's rushing yards. Now, we've talked about this LSU offensive line, the best offensive line in college football. -3 rushing yards in the second quarter. LSU was able to creep back and forth they went. LSU aided by some very garbage refereeing. And in the end, South Carolina had a chance to tie it with a 49-yarder and missed it by a foot. I felt really bad for that kid. South Carolina coach Shane Beamer said Sunday, the SEC told us celebrations in the end zone were going to be allowed, but not taunting. They're going to be looking out for taunting. And on the last play of the game, there's 2 clear instances of taunting happening by LSU. So he's whining in the media that taunting was not called from LSU, which is the softest thing I've ever heard. I'm okay with taunting being called if someone puts a really nasty hit on somebody and stands over and kind of flexes on them when they're on the ground. But these celebration taunting penalties are ridiculous to me. But to whine about it not being called, that's like next level soft. And I would be embarrassed if that was my head coach. But anyway, I think South Carolina is not a bad team. I also think LSU is not a bad team, but that's not good enough when you're LSU to be not a bad team. And it's really got me rethinking, how good is USC really? Remember, it's the USC win against LSU 27-20 in the opener that's got everybody thinking, okay, USC is now, something again. I don't know if we didn't overvalue that too much. LSU last week against Nicholls State, 88 yards rushing against Nicholls State. I just don't think this is a very good team. Honestly, I think the Brian Kelly experiment is about to go down in flames in the next 2 years, but it's got me questioning USC. The following week, USC shut out Utah State 48-0. Utah State's in shambles. They fired their head coach like 3 weeks before the season over a scandal. And USC, we know they play Michigan next week. We're going to learn a lot from that game, and obviously a really exciting game. The Apple Cup, Washington and Washington State. Washington produces more apples than any other state in the union by a wide margin. They played this game at the Seahawks field, Lumen Field, the 116th meeting of the Apple Cup. Washington State fans were furious that this game was in Seattle. It was Washington State's return in the rotation to host Washington in Pullman. But when Washington left for the Big Ten, they said, look, we're traveling too much. If you want to play the game, we'll play you, but it's got to be in Seattle. Washington State said, okay, but not at Husky Stadium. You got to pick someplace else. So they played at the Seahawks place, and the Cougars won. They stopped the Huskies on a 4th and 1 from the 1-yard line. Huskies ran a speed option with Will Rogers, who's not much of an athlete, a curious play call, and Washington State gets the win. They're first since 2021. Feel good for those guys. That's, they got left behind, man. Oregon State, Washington State just got left behind, and it sucks. They're trying to rework their Pac-12 conference by bringing in Boise State and Colorado State and Fresno and San Jose. And now they got 6 guys to try and make it the Pac-12. It's the Pac-12 in name only. This is a clear group of 5 collection of teams, but I guess it makes them feel better to call themselves the Pac-12. So go ahead with your bad self. Try to get those 2 more teams and get you some money. We'll see what happens. Notre Dame has lost to Purdue 26 times in history. Did you know that? That's a lot of losses to Purdue. But they headed in there Saturday and tried to get some redemption after their loss to NIU, and they sure got it. 66-7, Notre Dame beats Purdue, and Riley Leonard, back after a terrible performance against NIU, rushes for 100 yards, 11 for 16 for 112, and they're going to need this guy's athleticism because he is not a very good passer of the football. Purdue's quarterback Hudson Card was absolutely horrific, and Purdue sucks. Colorado was given 7, playing the rivalry game against Colorado State. Now, I took Colorado in the betting world, but I was obviously rooting for Colorado State because I'm a hater. Now, I don't think Colorado State was going to be good enough to exploit the deficiencies on Colorado, and they definitely were not. A month ago, here's where it gets juicy. At media days, Colorado State's quarterback and their best wide receiver were running their mouths about Colorado in the game last year that went to double overtime. And I think they said that we should have murdered them or something like that. It wasn't very flattering. And they go in, play the game. And after the game, remember, these are big rivals. After the game, Colorado wins. Shedeur Sanders and Braden Fowler-Nicolosi, the quarterback for Colorado State, approach each other. Fowler-Nicolosi reaches out to shake his hand. Shedeur won't shake his hand. Instead, he calls him out on what he said. Now, a lot of people mad at Shedeur. Wouldn't shake his hand. Last week, they lose. He calls out his offensive line and a receiver. And then this. So not gracious in victory or defeat. But I got to say, as critical as I've been of Shedeur Sanders, I don't got a problem with this, man. Like, this dude was running his mouth. Like, no way. If that was Will Howard and Davis Warren had been saying what Fowler-Nicolosi said about him the week before, he doesn't want to shake his hand. I don't care. I'm all for hate and rivalries. Like, yeah, you can miss me with that. Dion had some comments about it afterwards.
Come on, dog.
Oh, I love it, man. It's electric. Look, if nothing else, this does bring a whole lot of fun to college football discussion, right? It really does. I think we need more rivalries of people that can't stand each other. I get a little irritated with how friendly some of these rivalries have become. So I'm all for it. But he's getting crushed by a lot of folks, and they can go ahead and do that. Let's get to the big losers of the weekend that kind of surround me here. We've got these guys over here. I guess not on my right side, but on my left side. Texas A&M went into Florida, and the final was 33-20, but it was not nearly that close. Florida was shut out in the first half for the first time since 2015. Texas A&M quarterback Connor, let me see my shoes back, Wegman did not start due to injury. Marcel Reed started for him instead, played really well. Billy Napier was absolutely humiliated. There was a drunk driving PSA that featured Billy Napier on the scoreboard at halftime. And Billy's up there telling people not to drink and drive. And the stadium booed him so loud on the Jumbotron that he was asked about it in his post-game press conference. Also exiting the field, not a great reaction from the fans. That's a tough look, man. Even made my mom feel bad. He was basically asked in his press conference afterwards to defend his job. Why are you the right guy for the job? He couldn't muster up a defense other than to say they've made a lot of progress inside the walls. And I'm assuming he means inside the walls of the brand new, beautiful facility that has been built during his tenure. It's just not been good enough, man. His tenure started with the ridiculous Jaden Rashada deal that he was clearly involved in. Now that he's in the middle of a lawsuit with the Georgia quarterback, which is just amazing that we don't talk more about this, that the Florida head coach is in a lawsuit with the Georgia quarterback. He's been given a ton of support. He's got a huge support staff. Brand new facility, as I said, and just flub after flub, including puzzling hires. The weirdest defensive coordinator I've ever seen. And the worst part is this guy's schedule was set up perfectly this year. One of the hardest schedules we've ever seen. How could that be perfect? It was perfect because it was so hard that even if he lost 7 games, he was going to get a pass. All he had to do was look not incompetent against teams like Miami and Texas A&M. And he could have lost to every other big dog on the schedule and been just fine. He couldn't do it. But pretty clear to me in the press conference, listening to him, that this is a defeated man. He knows his fate. He's ready to roll. And Florida absolutely has to get rid of him now. $27 million on the buyout. Florida's going to have to cough that up, or they're going to lose the entire fan base because they are done. Absolutely done with this dude. Even his friends in the media who have been lying and telling us that Billy is a really good coach all along. Billy's not a good coach because Billy's nice to them, are now admitting, yeah, Billy's got to go. The incompetent athletic director who came out before the Miami game, he's going to have to step up and make the decision here pretty soon. And I absolutely love it because I can't stand Florida. So it sucks for that guy. Seems like a nice guy, but I love seeing them just churn after churn after churn in futile attempts to once again be good when they have not been since Urban Meyer. It's great. They were horrible during that era. Their fans were awful, and I can't stand them. So there we go. Aside from that, Texas A&M and Mike Elko, keep in mind that Notre Dame loss in week 1, non-conference loss. They're still in the SEC race. I think they might have found something with this quarterback here. Connor Wegman was not that dude. Let's have a look at the schedule. They got Bowling Green in Arkansas. Then Missouri comes into town, into College Station. That'll be a good contest. I'd say Missouri be favored at this point by, I don't know, probably 3 or 4. Then they got Mississippi State, LSU, South Carolina, New Mexico State, Auburn, and they finish with Texas. It's a pretty favorable schedule. They got a ton of talent, enough to compete with anybody. Who knows, man? Who knows? But the Gators, not the only big loser from the state of Florida. Portal Mike Norvell had his old squad, the Memphis Tigers, where he came up, come into town in a big recruiting weekend where he had top guys, including stud Ohio State commit TJ Alford in attendance. And people were kind of sweating the warm embrace that TJ and Mike Norvell shared when he got there. I'm not worried one bit about TJ when it comes to Florida State. Miami would be the guy to worry about in that one. But they're just terrible, man. Florida State was terrible. Terrible on offense, terrible on defense. DJU's terrible. And Memphis jumped out early and looked like the team that wanted to be there. They looked like they wanted to play. They looked like they were the better team. First half was abysmal for FSU. 3 first downs in the half, 67 total yards. They fumbled the ball in the second play. This was not an upset. Memphis was the better team. FSU unable to score 14 points for the second straight game. A preseason top 10 team, 0-3. Undisciplined, tons of penalties, a late offsides call to give Memphis a first down when they were trying to mount a comeback. It was just horrible. DJU, 16 for 30 for 200 yards and a pick. Mike Norvell seems reluctant to go to Brock Glenn, former Buckeye commit who won them the ACC championship last year. I don't know what he's waiting for. My buddy Chris Drew. Chris, are you listening? Chris is producing today. Chris and I talk a lot of college football, and one of his favorite storylines heading into the season was DJU heading back to Clemson, leading FSU in there and rubbing it in Dabo's face. And we haven't circled back on that, but I don't know if he's going to be the starting quarterback when they head back in there. The way things have gone, I doubt that he's going to be. But the interesting thing is FSU was just bragging right before the season about using 70% of their money on portal and player retention, where other teams don't do that. And it's clear from the guys that they sign in the portal, big name dudes, that the majority of that 70%, not going on retention, but portal. And they thought they had it all figured out because last year went so great. All those dudes that got drafted off of last year's team came to them in the portal. all except for one. They thought they were going to repeat that. And they're showing everybody that this is a roll of the dice. You bring in these mercenary type portal guys. Sometimes they're going to come in and care about your program. And clearly, sometimes they will not. And this team, there's a bunch of guys that don't give a damn for Florida State, don't care about Mike Norvell's program. It's just the next step to the NFL for them. And it is readily apparent when they're playing. They lose to Georgia Tech, Boston College, and Memphis. I mean, come on, man. Go back to last year. That's 4 losses in a row with Georgia after they went 13 in a row. Crazy. All right, on to the rival. Michigan loses. Michigan wins 28-18. Another one that felt like a loss. Arkansas State. That's just terrible, man. That's terrible. How you guys feeling about that? Look, Sherrone Moore, man, I get it. Like, a lot of them supported this in the beginning. And I just feel like this guy is he was pushed into this a little too fast. He's not ready for it. I watched his post-game presser, had 1,000-yard stare. He's not ready for this. You look at the quarterback situation, it's abysmal. They told us all offseason that Alex Orji was the next Cam Newton. And the next Cam Newton couldn't even win the job, but it looks like de facto he may end up getting it next week when USC rolls into town because Davis Warren was so bad, throwing 3 picks. The offensive line has been terrible. The right tackle, he's awful. The center's awful. They tried to flip that up and bring in a new center. I don't think it went much better. Linebacker Jayshon Barham. Now, we were told this transfer from Maryland linebacker was going to be one of the best in the Big Ten. They talked about him all offseason. This guy, 3rd straight week, he is PFF's lowest graded defender on the Michigan defense. 3 weeks in a row. He looks absolutely clueless out there, but he does look good in a uniform. I'll give him that. He looks a very imposing looking guy. That's for sure. But I don't know what they're going to do about the offensive line. The defense definitely does not look like a dominant defense. You're going to look at the defensive numbers this year. Keep in mind, this was the number 1 defense last year. A lot of returning parts. They are 1 spot above USC at number 54 in total defense. Samaj Morgan, their fake elite playmaker, the one on Instagram Live last year talking crap about Ryan Day and Marv. I think this dude had 1 catch. Not an elite playmaker, and it's just a mess. It's an absolute mess. It doesn't take a student of football to know that this team was going to drop off big time from last year. I'm still wondering how Michigan fans were happy with the hiring of Sherrone Moore when they found out that the entire staff was then going to walk out the door with Jim Harbaugh. Before they all walked out the door, it made sense to me. You know, try to keep the continuity, promote an assistant, everybody else stays in place, similar to what Ohio State did with Ryan Day. The difference, of course, everybody from Urban Meyer's staff stayed there. Harbaugh's staff all left. Now you've just got a guy in his first ever head coaching job that has to go hire his first staff. And things not looking great with that first staff. The Michigan fans are not happy with a lot of the position coaches and a lot of those hires so far. We'll see how it goes. But USC rolls into town and SC had a bye. So they're fresh. They've played 2 pretty good games to start off the season. LSU, then 48-0 against Utah State, a game where they barely got tested. They're healthy, injury-free. I have not seen the line yet for that game, but should be pretty interesting. Sherrone Moore had some comments about Davis Warren and his turnovers and pulling him later on in the game. Said he can't put the ball in harm's way. So we had to make a change. We'll continue practicing and go from there. Some of the prominent Michigan writers on the beat, Chris Bayless. This was a game we had hoped to see massive improvement. Instead, we saw turnovers, terrible penalties, a turnstile right tackle, veterans blowing blocks. But maybe we all should have expected a quarterback controversy. So there we go, man. As far as the Big Ten, I don't know. I'd say they're maybe like the 5th or 6th best team in the Big Ten. We'll have to do the power rankings soon. And as for the polls, the coaches poll came out last week, and it had Georgia, Ohio State, Texas. This week, Texas has jumped Ohio State. So it goes like so in the coaches poll. And in the AP poll, which is usually the only one I follow or care about, we have now got Texas at number 1, Georgia number 2, Ohio State number 3. And then you got the cluster. The Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Missouri. Those 4 to me are kind of like a cluster that I don't really see much separation in. But I would say a whole lot of love for Ole Miss. Tennessee and Missouri have at least beaten a ranked team, with Tennessee beating NC State, Missouri just beating Boston College. Ole Miss hasn't beaten anybody. They've definitely looked good, but they beat Furman 76-0, Middle Tennessee 52 to something, and then they beat just their last game. Who the hell they beat? Wake Forest. So they haven't beaten anybody, and that's a case like I like the fluidity with which they're doing the rankings this year. But if you're going to be fluid, be consistent. Tennessee, Missouri, both have beaten ranked teams. Ole Miss has not. That's clearly just holding on to what you thought Ole Miss was at the beginning of the season. Tennessee should definitely, by merit, be ranked ahead of them. And this is where the preseason ranks bother me. When you get so attached to what you thought preseason that you're unwilling to change. I don't have a problem with preseason rankings. A lot of people hate them. Do you know how much week 1 would suck for you if you didn't see those numbers? Like we don't acknowledge it, but we want to see those numbers next to the game. We want to see those ranked teams. Like we crave it. And it's fine as long as they're fluid with the rankings. But my question is, do Texas, Georgia, and Ohio State still stand in that category of the 3 and then the gap to you? As of now, it still stands that way for me. And I don't think Georgia's performance changed that for me. I still think that they have got everything that is required to be a national championship winning team. They had a bad week. I think they can be got. I definitely think they can be got. I think Texas can be got too. To me, Ohio State looks like the most unstoppable team. They look like the scariest team to me. But I do find it interesting. We started the year, Georgia, after the Clemson win, the belle of the ball from the media. Everybody was talking about them. We heard the guys, the national pundits say, we come in every year and it's just like, oh yeah, we shouldn't bother talking about anybody else. This is all Georgia again. And then last week and this week, it's moved to Texas. And now Georgia's getting discounted. And the Buckeyes kind of flying under the radar, which is a little strange, but I think that'll change after this week. Definitely after next week, we're going to see that movement. But definitely they're loving on Texas. Isaiah Bond, Ryan Wingo, their offensive and defensive lines, bigger and deeper than everybody. Most talented team in the country we're hearing now. You know what else is interesting? Ohio State not ranked number 1 or number 2 by any of them, but they still say things like, if Ohio State doesn't win a national championship, it's going to be a disappointment, when Ohio State's not even their favorite to win the national championship. It's ridiculous. I talk to the Duck fans a lot. The Duck fans certainly think the Buckeyes are the number 1 team in the country, most of the ones I talk to. But, I don't know. What do you guys think? We got our first Big Ten Friday night game coming up. It's going to be pretty big. Nebraska hosts Illinois, 2 ranked teams out of the Big Ten, and that's going to be really cool. I hate it for what it's doing to high schools, right? Like, picture high school football in Nebraska on Friday. The Huskers are playing. They're ranked 22 or something. Illinois comes in ranked 23. There's not a soul in the state of Nebraska that's going to go to their high school football game. They're absolutely going to be either at the game or watching the Huskers. Nobody but their family is going to be at the game. And that sucks. And that's part of why I didn't want to see big time college football going to Friday. However, as someone who loves college football, I think it's awesome that we get this bonus game on Friday, right? So we get Illinois at Nebraska on Friday. And it's just like a game that I don't think I would be able to catch much of on Saturday. I do the quad box like you guys do, but there's usually only a couple I can really focus on to get a real feel for the game. And I feel like the Nebraska-Illinois one would be one I'm just kind of glancing over at once in a while, catching one play here, one play there. To be able to focus in on a game like that, I'm really going to enjoy. And that'll be on Friday this week. And we've got a much better slate coming up. Disdain Rogue, Feinbaum talking about Urban playing co-pilot coach for Florida just to get them through the season. Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't think that would happen. I find this guy is just now saying things that are so disingenuous just to get a reaction. He didn't used to be that way, and it's been pretty disappointing. So, not great. What's up, Dago? Mika, how you doing? Mika says FSU is garbage. Garbage indeed. Hollywood Hager said Miami backed off. He said Miami backed off him. Talking about TJ. That's great news. I think TJ is a lock. I always think he has been. I've been consistent on that. Of course, I was saying the same thing about Naeem forever. And, that's been looking sketchy, but I'm going to hold strong to it. Nothing we can do about it anyway. I do just hope that if he does flip, he does it sooner rather than later, so they've got time to pivot. Dave Greenshield, what's up, buddy? Dave says, I was thinking Norvell was a good coach, and you weren't alone. We did the top 10 coach, I started the show in the off season, right? And I remember, many days not having much content or much to talk about and going over whoever the most recent top 10 coaching list was, or top 25 coaching list. They were a staple of the show for like a month. And I would go through them and, make fun of the author of it, particularly the ones that had Mike Norvell as a top 5 head coach ahead of Ryan Day. There was a whole hell of a lot of them. I think the worst was seeing Dan Lanning as the number 2 coach on somebody's thing. It's like, are you kidding me, dude? Like, you can say this guy is a great program builder at this point. He's certainly shown that. But as a football coach, we've not seen anything that could merit that yet at all. And you can say you think this is what may happen, but that's not what a best coaches list is. That is, how do you rank these coaches right now? Anyway, that really bugged the shit out of me. Stu thinks Sharon is in over his head. Posh thinks Teton Media is down and telling truths. They are, which is interesting because they lied all offseason. They lied about Alex Orji, that's for sure. They lied about Jayshon Barham, that's for sure. They lied about the offensive line. We were told that offensive line was going to be just fine. They look terrible. Cooter Cat, what's going on, buddy? Bugsy's dad, how you doing, pal? He thinks Michigan will roll out the Jack Tuttle man next week. The veteran Jack Tuttle, who was teammates with Chris Olave. Ryan Day was scouting Jack Tuttle out in California when he found Chris Olave, which is always a crazy story. And Jack Tuttle, here he is still in college, bouncing around like the journeyman that he's always been. And if he starts, I guess you might get more consistency, but I don't think you have much upside. The Duck Knight says, nobody ever called Orji a great quarterback. No, absolutely not. Nobody called him a great quarterback, but they certainly called him a better quarterback than a guy who couldn't beat out Davis Warren for the starting job. That's a different tune.
Kyle B says, Michigan lied to themselves and the nation all offseason, and now they're getting exposed. I honestly think, you take cues from the people that you trust around the team when you follow a team. And we've talked about the folks that they have that cover that team for forever down here. It's just a totally different thing, man. They're just straight up like the PR wing of the program. They're not there's no we've got some outfits like that cover Ohio State, and you can identify them pretty easily. The difference is up there, it's like 80% of them. It's very hard to parse through. Okay, who's official state media for the program, and who's telling us the truth? It's like that at every college. And we've talked about why before. You had all these guys who worked for newspapers or websites, went into business for themselves, and when they did, what's their product? Their product is that access to the program. That access is controlled by the program that they're covering. So they have incentive to be very nice and toe the line to continue to get that product that they need to sell to make their living. Which is how that beating on the beat gets down. You know what I mean? Posh says James Yoder is not a happy Wolverine. I mean, I wouldn't be either, man. I wouldn't be either. You've been lied to all off season. You got a mess on your hands. My biggest thing is the hiring of Sherrone Moore. Like I said to a couple of, listen, I sometimes am a bit hyperbolic and troll Michigan fans, but I talk to plenty of Michigan fans on a normal conversational level, and I couldn't get out of damn near any of them questioning that Sherrone Moore hire at the time. And then when we found out that everybody was leaving, like none of them were concerned about it a bit. And to me, when you're looking at, Bama going and getting Kalen DeBoer, Texas A&M going and getting Mike Elko, and it's like, you didn't want them to test the market at all? Seen who you might have been able to get in? No, we're good. Thought it was just going to keep on rolling, which totally defied logic to me. But who knows? It could be a dip for one season and then shoot back up to the moon. It could be. I don't think so. Anthony says, in fairness, Ohio State hasn't beaten anyone yet. I think they're going to be great and probably go undefeated, but it's just hard to judge against weak competition. It's definitely the problem. It is hard to judge against weak competition, but what are we talking about here? Everything on the team, for the most part, is a known quantity except for a couple pieces, right? We know exactly what the defense is. There's really you don't need to judge anything other than they're deeper and more talented, right? So that's obvious. So you can kind of just discard that and say that's the best defense in the country. As far as the offense, we're looking at what are they going to do schematically and how Will Howard is going to do, how the offensive line is going to do. And yeah, it is harder against weaker competition, but I think we saw in week 2 a much different, a line that was in sync and playing with each other that we didn't see in week 1. Now, they got to beat their man who's going to be a bigger, stronger man as the competition gets better. And yeah, we definitely need to see that. But the way they looked and the way they played together, the way Will Howard looked, we're going to get that same performance out of Will Howard every time. Every time. He's going to throw a couple of bad balls that have us scratching our heads, and he'll be generally accurate 20 yards and in. Some of those bad balls are going to result in picks and piss everybody off. That's what we're going to get out of him. Mika says, Nebraska looks good. I sure think so too. And I'm excited I do like the fact that, when I was, 18, 19, you had maybe 15. Tennessee Nebraska, Miami, and then they all just kind of disappeared, right? And now it's like those three are all of a sudden at once all like resurging as programs, and it's pretty wild. Matt Hoffman wants some Tuesday Maction back. That would be awesome. I used to love that, man. That was my first foray really into like message boards on the computer, was Tuesday Night Maction. There was like a little underground cult of Tuesday Night Mactioners, and we would sit and tweet back and forth to each other about the Tuesday Night Maction. What I always wish, though, is for that Tuesday Night Maction, the crowds in the MAC. I wish that more people would attend the games. It would be so much more fun if there was some crowd going on. Dave Greenshield says, who is the Miami sugar daddy? That's John Ruiz. The money for Cam Ward seems well worth it. Tops it for the Heisman right now. Absolutely. Rod says, Alpha Dog, our schedule this year is pretty much like Michigan's the last 2 years. No Power 5 non-con because of the realignment. Exactly what it is. And I really think it's crazy people criticizing Ohio State's schedule. Like, number one, it's ranked as the 35th schedule in the country. It's actually more difficult than, I think, Missouri, Tennessee, like a bunch of playoff contenders. It's ranked more difficult than that. And that's without a major non-con game in the first three. But the thing is, Ohio State has set the bar for playing that big time out of conference game in one of the first 3 weeks of the season. Literally every year for the last 20 years, Ohio State has had that one big game before anybody else was doing it. So I don't want to hear it. I really don't. And had another one scheduled with the team that was in the national championship last year. They came to the Big Ten. Things happen. Do I think we should have gone and gotten another game? Could you have? You probably could have made something happen. Mika says, thanks for having me on the other day. If anybody missed that, on Friday, Mika came on and we did a little call-in show, and it was awesome. Mika is Tuttle is a senior citizen. Mika is an expert on all top Ohio high school prospects, and she is an absolute wealth of information. And you did great, Mika. Thank you for coming on with me. Dago said Teton is getting exactly what they deserve. Karma is not friendly, and she doesn't waste time making things right immediately. JR, what's up, buddy? Good morning. Michigan fans saying Connor Stallions had no impact, but also mad that having Orgy in lets everyone know it's going to be a run play every time. And he's going to run is pure hypocrisy. So that is interesting. That is quite a conundrum to try to make that argument, isn't it? Dale says Ward Manuel didn't want to have to work that hard to test the market. And, you can make the case. You can definitely make the case that there are some ADs that it's tough. And not only is it tough, it's risky. And you also got to factor in sometimes when you go with the hometown guy, even if it doesn't work out, you get a little more grace from the fan base because that was the guy they wanted too. If you go with the outside guy, you're kind of sticking your neck out a little bit further. So there is, that natural, there's a little more security when you're in that position to sticking close to home. That Ward Manuel, boy, they do not like him. They absolutely hate that guy. Is he, did he play up there? Did Ward Manuel play for them? Yeah, Dave says some of these college quarterbacks should be collecting pensions. It's unbelievable when we add in the the COVID year, and now they're talking about they want to give him even more, another year on top of it. I heard people saying the other day, like, oh, this is a good thing for college football. Dude, what? In what world is this good for college football? To continue to encourage 24 and 25-year-olds to play with 18 and 19-year-olds. I don't know about you, but from 18 or 19 to 24 or 25, that's two different versions of me, like physically, with training throughout that time period. Very different versions. I don't know that I agree with that at all. And I don't know why we're trying to, when you look at a guy like Cam Rising, who's in his 7th season, let's just say this finger laceration extends his career. He gets another year of eligibility. Season number 8. Like, we keep seeing things like this. That's a long NFL career, 8 years. And this dude was in college for that time playing ball. It's insane. Dylan Gabriel, this is his 5th starting season as a quarterback. Like, eligibility just doesn't exist anymore. It's crazy. I don't know, man. I don't feel like we have been have we reaped the benefits of any of this stuff yet? Where's our 5th and 6th year guys? I want some 7-year guys. Oh, we got none of the Oregon fans in when I go live in the morning. I forgot it's too early for them. Woody says that Ward Manuel was teammates with Harbs. Okay. Maybe that's got something to do with why they don't agree. Raf, what's up, buddy? Raf says it's not college football related, but interesting to see that Bears fans are now blaming the offensive line instead of the quarterback. So they did blame nothing but Fields. Now they're going to blame the offensive line and not the quarterback. Fields looking pretty damn good and talented, and not so much for their goofball, Caleb, what's his face, who I can't stand. I don't like that kid at all. Yo, Billy McBride, what's happening, buddy? Where are you? You're a Duck fan. Are you out west? Or what are you doing up so early? I guess it's not that early, right? Delta. Oh, it's 7:30. The Duck Knight, he works graveyards. Justin Fields has some dots. Absolutely. JR says Marv looked good yesterday. He sure did. And good for him, boy. After week 1, I felt really bad for him. And then we heard Kyler Murray come out and say he wasn't going to basically give him the star treatment or give him a lot of targets or look for him, which seems to me to be kind of I don't know if it was like a power struggle or I don't want to give this rookie any shine. I did not see the full quote, but I feel like maybe that might have been taken out of context. Did anybody see the full quote of what Kyler said about throwing the ball to Marv? But he threw it to him yesterday, as he should have, because good things happen generally when you throw the ball to Marvin Harrison. Shocking, right? Dave says Jaden Daniels is looking really good. I haven't seen him, to be honest, guys. I was working on today's show. I just had the NFL kind of loosely in the background. The Browns have got me so bummed out that I just have not really gotten into it yet. This whole thing with the entire Deshaun Watson experience has got me feeling so incredibly jaded with the Browns. And when I feel like that about the Browns, I have a hard time getting into the rest of the league. And I just bury my nose in to college football, watching games I didn't watch, rewatching. I've not been so far away from the NFL in my life. Like I'm just far away from it. And it just keeps growing. It just keeps growing. I'll always root for the Browns, but I'm just really disgusted by this entire Deshaun Watson thing. Like I just want this guy gone. I just want him the hell off the team I cheer for. I can't imagine being teammates with him. There was something last year that just totally encapsulated the Deshaun Watson experience. I tuned into a game. Joe Burrow, Cincinnati, it was a Cincinnati and Browns game, right? Joe Burrow was out. Deshaun Watson also out. They pan to Deshaun Watson in the luxury box, sitting with Jimmy Haslam. They're yucking it up, having a good old time. Deshaun's got his foot kicked up, a drink in his hand with a maraschino cherry, and then they flash immediately in the next frame to Joe Burrow with his hand bandaged up, sitting next to the backup quarterback on the bench, showing him something on the tablet, talking, looking, coaching him up. And it was so stark, like champion, bum-ass loser. You know what I mean? Like, that's just, pardon my language. You know, so I just want this guy gone. JR thinks Marv could have had a better day if Kyler would have thrown some better fades to him in the end zone. What JR is really saying is Marv could have had a better day if he had a better quarterback. Mika thinks Kyler Murray is jealous. I think he is too. Woody says Marv went over to Kyler's crib and cut his Xbox controller cords. Famously, Kyler Murray had to get a stipulation in his contract of something about not playing Xbox so much because the guy's addicted to Call of Duty or something. Is that still the thing? Is he still in Call of Duty or has he changed? Dave thinks Marv will be the best receiver in the league in a few years. He really looked like it yesterday. Dago says Watson has made more money holding a clipboard than a football since he got paid. It looks to me like the guy doesn't want to play. Like, you know, you just talk about like who would ever really want to just sit, like when you're a competitor, you know, sit out. He seems perfectly content missing games. Guy misses so many games. I can't stand him. Rod says the lobby looked good yesterday. Yeah. Chris looked good. Yeah, I saw all the Buckeye replays yesterday. We had some damn good Buckeye performances yesterday. A couple Boza sacks. Whole lot of good stuff. Noah Brown even got in the mix. He's still kicking. All right, my friends. Please check out my sponsor, ColumbusApparelCo.com. You can find a full line of JUCK on Bucks gear as well as getting some Columbus or some Ohio-related gear. And they handle all your screen printing, and they're fantastic. So check them out at ColumbusApparelCo.com. They treat us well. We reciprocate. And I appreciate all you guys for joining me here live on a Monday morning, talking some football with me. We will get into the Big Ten power rankings tomorrow, as well as hitting on whatever comes out today and preview what's going to happen next week, as we've got, I think, a little more interesting schedule now that we are working our way, learning some things about some teams and a couple of big games, including USC heading up north, which I am really looking forward to. So I appreciate you guys so much, and I will see you tomorrow. JUCK on Bucks out.